and it's coming out of India. We're talking about a technology that honestly sounds like it defies the laws of physics. A nuclear reactor that actually creates more fuel than it consumes. It's a game changer. So let's dive into this incredible story.
Here's what we're going to cover. First, the major milestone that just happened. Then we'll get into the magic of how this reactor actually breeds fuel. After that, the wild engineering challenge of dealing with what's essentially liquid fire. We'll also see how this fits into India's 70-year-old master plan for energy. And finally, what happens next.
All right, let's start with the event itself, the moment that put this incredible piece of technology on the world map.
So, picture this. It's April 6th at the Kalpakkam nuclear facility. Scientists and engineers achieve something called criticality. Now, that's the magic moment a nuclear reactor truly comes to life, when the chain reaction becomes self-sustaining. It's basically the finish line for decades of incredibly hard work.
Yeah, that name is a mouthful, right? Prototype fast breeder reactor. But it actually tells you everything you need to know. It uses fast neutrons, and it breeds its own fuel. But what in the world does that actually mean? Let's break it down.
Okay, this is where we get into the core science of it all. And honestly, it is just fascinating. This is the process that could essentially multiply a country's nuclear fuel resources almost out of thin air.
You see, in pretty much every other nuclear reactor out there, the neutrons that fly out during fission have to be slowed way down to keep the reaction going. But this new reactor does the exact opposite. It's designed to keep those neutrons moving at incredibly high speeds, and that is the secret to its amazing ability. So, how does this breeding actually work? Well, it's a kind of nuclear alchemy. First, the reactor's core, which is a mix of uranium and plutonium, shoots out these super fast neutrons. Now, some of them escape the core and slam into a surrounding blanket made of uranium-238, which, by the way, is usually considered waste. But when a U-238 atom gets hit by one of these fast neutrons, it absorbs it, and it literally transforms into brand new high-quality fuel, plutonium-239. So get this, while the reactor is burning its fuel, it's also creating even more fuel around it. It literally breeds.
So the physics is brilliant, but to actually build a machine that can do this, you need some seriously next-level engineering. You can't use normal materials, especially when it comes to cooling the reactor core. You have to handle a very, very difficult substance.
Right, so in a normal reactor, you just use water to pull heat away from the core. But water is a huge problem here. It slows neutrons down, which is the one thing you cannot do in a fast reactor. The solution? Liquid sodium. And as you can see, its boiling point is a ridiculous 880 degrees Celsius. That lets the reactor run way hotter and much more efficiently. Plus, you don't need to keep it under insane pressure the way you do with water.
But here's the catch, and it is a big one. Sodium is incredibly dangerous stuff. It bursts into flame the second it touches air, and it explodes violently if it touches water. This meant the Indian engineering teams at BHAVINI and IGCAR couldn't just buy a solution. They had to invent, from scratch, incredibly advanced, completely homegrown safety systems to handle it. And they pulled it off. And this brings us to a really crucial point. This reactor isn't just some cool one-off science project. It's the absolute linchpin in a strategic plan for India's energy future that was drawn up decades and decades ago. This entire idea goes all the way back to Dr. Homi Bhabha, the founder of India's nuclear program. He had this incredible foresight. He knew that India had very limited reserves of uranium, but he also knew it was sitting on some of the world's largest deposits of another element, thorium. The only problem? You can't just stick thorium in a reactor and get power. You need a bridge to unlock its potential. And here is that bridge. This is the three-stage master plan. Stage 1, which has been running for decades, uses India's natural uranium to make power. A key byproduct of that is plutonium. Now, enter Stage 2. That's our fast breeder reactor. It takes the plutonium from Stage 1 and uses it as fuel to breed even more plutonium. But it also does something else incredible. It can be used to convert thorium into a special kind of fuel called uranium-233. And that U-233 is the key that finally unlocks Stage 3, a future fleet of reactors designed to run on thorium, which could power India for well over 200 years. So, the reactor works, and we know just how critical it is to the grand plan. The big question now is, what happens next? Well, first, it's worth pointing out just how advanced the safety design is. It's what's called a pool-type reactor, meaning the entire core is submerged in this giant tank of sodium, which acts as a huge heat sink. It also has passive safety, which is amazing. It means the laws of physics themselves will cause the reaction to slow down if things get too hot. No human intervention required. And, just as important, this was a massive Make in India achievement. Almost every critical part was designed and built right there in the country. So right now, the engineers are in what they call the power ascension phase. They're basically taking it for a slow test drive, running it at very low power, meticulously checking every single system before they gradually ramp it up, generate steam, and finally start spinning the turbines to make electricity.
And what's the ultimate payoff for all this science and engineering? 500 megawatts of clean, steady, carbon-free electricity feeding into India's national grid. That's a real, tangible result that will power homes and industries.
So, here's the bottom line. India has just proven the critical piece of technology that connects its energy present to its energy future. The success of this one reactor doesn't just add power to the grid today, it unlocks a clear strategic path to energy security for centuries to come, all based on a fuel it has in enormous abundance. The question is no longer if this is possible, but simply when.